Dave, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, and welcome Augies Worldwide. We're here with Trevor Oman, and we're going to go through some Ask Dave questions that have been sent to hamradioanswers@gmail.com or else via the Ask Dave form on my website at dcasler.com. I mentioned earlier in one of the videos that I was having a lot of trouble with the website. I think I may be on top of it now. We'll see. We'll see if it stays that way. I don't know what it is. Arthur C. Clarke said any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and sometimes I think that applies to web hosting sites. Anyway, for the moment, we've got it working, got control of it, got everything working as far as the uploads. Well, let's see what we've got here. Trevor?
All right. Mac has a question about his minimal startup cost and startup choices.
What we have is a ham in a not unusual situation of truly actually not having the money to invest in what can be, if you want it to be, an expensive hobby. So his question is, how low can you go in terms of price for getting set up for a general station or even a tech station? How low can that price go? The answer is it can go all the way down to zero if you want. To do that, you're going to have to borrow some equipment to get yourself started. I would suggest, first of all, the same thing I suggest to all new hams. Go find a club that you like. Use the ARRL Club Finder. You may have to drive a ways to get to a club that you like. I know the club I go to is 40 minutes away, and up in Olathe, which is north of Montrose, which is north of where I live, and that's where the club has been for quite a while. And before that, it was up in Deley. I had to go a full 2 hours to get up there and back. So, yeah, you may have to drive a bit. But once you get to know people, you can borrow equipment to get on the air. A lot of hams will loan you equipment with the clear understanding that you're going to give that equipment back after a specified period of time. And if you say a month, make it a month, okay? So you can borrow the equipment. That makes hams a lot more eager to come over and help you get on the air by loaning that equipment. For an antenna, if you're going to put up 2 meters, the antenna that MFJ sells, a simple 19-inch whip with a couple ground radios, can be had for $30. I would suggest that if you're going to put up an antenna for 40 meters, just a simple dipole. Start with something simple. No, it doesn't have to be all band. No, it doesn't have to be an expensive off-center fed dipole or anything like that. But I would go with a dipole. I wouldn't try and feed a long wire. That's frustrating and can create a lot of RFI in the shack. And then as you go along, replace that borrowed equipment with owned equipment. Now, some people, you might go to the person who has loaned you a piece of equipment and say, thank you very much. What would you sell it for? And then do some research on eBay, find out what that particular rig goes for. Maybe make the person an offer. Please, they may have emotional attachment to the radio and may not want to sell it. Understand that. They're under no obligation to sell. Even if it's just a spare radio that sits in the closet, it's theirs. But sometimes you can try and then purchase used equipment. Will really keep the cost down dramatically. And then someday you can shoot for some new equipment of your own. I used my Ten-Tech Jupiter HF rig for over 10 years before I decided to replace it. I think I had exceeded its capacity sometime prior to that, but it was a good radio, still a good radio, I might add. And I've found that if I let go of an HF radio, I always regret it. So I try to hold on to all my old HF radios. So I've got the Ten-Tech, and I've got the one that replaced too.
Jeff asks for recommendations on equipment, radio and an antenna.
there is a tendency to want to get the fanciest rig that you can find. I would recommend you get the simplest rig you can find. But he's looking at a quad band radio that is FM only on 10.62 meters and 70 centimeters. There is little to no 10 meter or 6 meter FM activity in the United States. If you live in a great big city, that might be different. You might do as well to just get yourself a standard dual bander, 2 meters and 70 centimeters. Now, that is, unless you have friends on the air who are already using 10 meter or 6 meter FM, then by all means do that. There is an antenna that MFJ makes. Now, this is different from what I said in a previous video where I said I didn't know of an antenna that covered 10.62 and 0.07. And that is, I'm sorry, 0.7. And that is the MFJ 1868. It covers 10 meters through 70 centimeters, and it's a $70 antenna. If you want just an antenna that's simply 2 meter and 440, also happens to cover 220, it's the MFJ 1740, which is an antenna that can be had for $30. Okay, so it's not expensive. By the way, you can build that same antenna yourself if you have an SO239 chassis mount connector, which you can get for $4 or $5, or a lot less than that at a swap fest. You can use good old-fashioned coat hangers, 19 inches for the whip, 19 inches for each of the 4 radials, and you've got yourself a good antenna. So,
John asks your opinion on whether or not he should purchase a Yaesu FT65R or an FT60R.
well, I don't have an opinion, and let me tell you why. I think the choice of a radio for personal use is highly personal. You're going to get something that you'll get to know. I will tell you that your first FM radio handheld will not be your last. I started out with my first, it was an over-the-shoulder held TR-22C by Drake that was a nice little crystal-controlled radio. And I've had many, many, many handhelds since. So I would suggest starting with something less expensive. If you wanted to play with DMR a little bit while you're at it, the Radioddity GD77, the Islands HD1, there are lots of the TYT UV8000E. There are lots of radios out there that are good, that are fairly inexpensive, and then you can use that as your learner radio. And then after you've used it for a while, you can say, you know, I'd really like some different features, or you may find yourself perfectly satisfied with it and keep it for a while. Try to stay away from the $20 radios. Get up over 50 in the regular price, so you're not getting a piece of schlock junk that's barely held together by a plastic screw. And then enjoy yourself on the air, and then work yourself up to one of these others. But it's highly personal what radio you select, and each brand has its advocates and detractors, so there's no such thing as the perfect universal radio.
All right, Willie, call sign KD5CEV, asks your opinion on an all-around antenna for use on a ham.
He's looking for a good one to use with the amateur satellites that can be mounted with tracking. Well, if you're mounted with tracking, you've got both an azimuth and an elevation rotator and some way of actually tracking the satellite. So there is software that will do that and do that very well. He asks specifically about the Diamond A430S10. That is a 70 centimeter antenna with 10 elements. I happen to have one. I did I did a review of it in a recent Ask Dave. There's a similar antenna for 2 meters that you can use. Now the thing is, if you're doing satellite and you're going to the trouble of an ASL mount, you may not be dealing just with 2 meters and 70 centimeters. You might have some other bands, microwave bands. I don't think anything gets down into 10 meters anymore, but you want to take a close look at that. I have a book, you can see the cover of it here, that I got from AMSAT that shows all the different satellites that are currently available and what the requirements are for the ground station. Some take fairly sophisticated ground stations, others you can do a handheld with a little FM transceiver, dual band transceiver. With a handheld antenna, you can do satellite operations too.
All right, Matt, call sign KF4ULD, wants to know about you connecting with listeners.
Well, this is how I connect with listeners, with the videos. And also on the occasions that I do live feed, we've got live chat. Also get feedback. The primary source of feedback from users is comments on YouTube to the YouTube videos. I try to read all of those. I try to be fairly liberal with replies. So if you put that up there, I try to get to all of them. If you put up a reply to a reply to a reply on something, sometimes YouTube lets that slip through the cracks and I don't see it. But if it's a first level reply, I will see it. Now, as far as monitoring, I do not monitor 2 meters very much. If I do, it's the Cedar Edge repeater or the Montrose repeater, and occasionally on 70 centimeters, the Water Dog repeater. I have to admit we are very sparsely populated here on the western slope. There's not much ham radio activity on the repeaters. There is a repeater up in Grand Junction I can hit with that 10 element 70 centimeter beam that is a DMR repeater, and that's connected to TAC Group 310, which is nationwide, so can have some good conversations on that. I also have a hotspot that I have connected to the talk group TAC 310, and so I'm on there from time to time. But mostly you'll catch me either on 40 meters or 20 meters, and when I'm on, I'm always happy to talk with anybody who comes along, and also with any Augies in particular, and talk about them and what they've done with ham radio.
Mike, call sign AA6MK, has a question about tuning into live stream.
Well, I'm in a hiatus right now on those Morse code live streams. They may start up again. I don't know at this point. I had to stop them. Subscribers who have clicked the bell when they subscribe to my videos, check there as you're watching a video with the screen small, it will show subscribed, and then there's a bell. If the bell has a kind of a ringing sound on it, that means that you're actually notified directly every time I post a new video, and you will be notified directly when a live session starts. After the live session, we lose the comments that were put in during the live session, but the video from the live session is captured and posted just like any other video.
Hey, Francesco, call sign HB9GUO, is learning how to tune a station. He needs help with that.
Okay. This is basically how to tune in while receiving, how to tune a station for phone for sideband. Well, let's just take for sideband here. Set your bandwidth to 3 kilohertz or 2.7 or whatever it is, but around 3 kilohertz. Set the RF gain to maximum and leave it there. Set the volume, which is your audio frequency gain, for a comfortable level. Select upper sideband or lower sideband. Above 10 megahertz, it's upper sideband. Below 10 megahertz, it's lower sideband, except the 60 meter band, which is weird, but you don't hear very much activity there anyway. I would suggest you tune in on either the 40 meter or the 20 meter bands, because with the sunspots what they are, the bands are often closed. Tune in the phone portion of the band. Use the band chart, which you see here, and take a look at the band that you're listening on and tune around in the phone portion of it. Again, in those higher bands, you're probably not going to hear very much. When you hear a station, tune across it gently until it sounds right. If all the pitches seem to be too high, tune it gradually so that those pitches go down, and eventually you'll get to a point where it sounds relatively natural. Now, a single sideband does not give the same kind of natural sound as AM, but you can get pretty close if you're careful when tuning. So, hope that helps.
Jim has a question about his antenna's maximum power capability.
Now, he's got two antennas that he's looking at here. One is a G5RV that can handle 1500 watts. The limiting factor there is the wire thickness in the antenna. And he also has an ICOM AH710 that has heavier gauge wires, but is advertised as only handling 150 watts. The reason is, if you look at that coil, look at the antenna on the internet, there's a coil across the top. The coil is a reactive component. And when you're dealing with reactances in an antenna, the circulating currents inside those reactances can get very high. And they can get high enough to actually break the wire or cause other issues like smoke. So because it has that reactive component, they keep the power down 150 watts so you don't fry that coil. The G5RV has no reactive components in it, so there's no circulating currents for the reactive components, so you're okay. That's why you can operate the G5RV with maximum power.
Bernie, call sign KD4SBY, is wondering about digital mode, how he can recognize sounds on band.
One way that you can recognize which digital mode is by where it is in the band. This works for, like, on 20 meters, 14.070 is the start of the PSK31 band to 14.073. 14.074 to about 14.076 is your FT8. 76 to 78 is your JT65 and JT9. If you get up above 14.080, you're into RIDI. Another way is to go to, and we'll put this notice up here, kb9ukd.com/digital. That's K, B as in boy, 9, uniform Kilo Delta.com, digital. And it has all kinds of sample sounds up there. So you can take a particular mode and listen to it and see what that particular mode sounds like. Most of the modes have very distinctive sounds, and you get used to recognizing them pretty clearly. The common modes are PSK31, FT8, JT65, JT9, and RIDI. And once you learn how to recognize those five, the big five, then you're in pretty good stead. The other modes come in irregularly, and you'll know, hey, that's something I don't recognize. You can try, often digital software will identify it for you. If you're using FL Digi or Ham Radio Deluxe, something like that, it will identify the mode for you.
All right, Dave, call sign KC2BLF, is wondering about a field strength meter.
In particular, he has an MFJ 802B field strength meter. The problem with field strength meters, what you're measuring is you're measuring the strength of the electric field in volts per meter. Okay, and the problem with field strength meters is that they can see only pretty strong fields. Now, this can help you with ground level measurements to compare antennas, but remember, a lot of antennas have an elevation angle, so you can go 200, 300 feet away from the antenna and not measure anything on the ground because all of the radiation is up above you. Now, another thing that you can do is use them to compare antennas, okay? And another thing you can use them for is just make sure you're getting out. Make sure that the antenna actually is transmitting. Of course, you need a helper in at the radio, or else give them the field strength meter and see what they can pick up. I've never had a meter that just measures field strength. You can also, with it, the way they work, it's got sort of a little dipole whip antenna. You can turn it vertically versus horizontally to find the polarization, which is a handy thing too.
All right, Jason, call sign KY9I, is wondering if you're still doing CW.
Right at the moment, the CW is in a hiatus. Those videos that I have done so far are up on the web. However, I didn't quite finish with the entire Morse code, so I will do at least that much more. And I've got to rethink this whole code thing. And if you have comments on how best to teach code in a YouTube environment, do please let me know how you think those should be done. The best way to do that is as a comment to one of those videos.
All right, call sign KG9WYO wants some recommendations on how to make contacts.
He's frustrated because he's tried to make contacts. He lives in Wyoming, which is about as sparsely populated as western Colorado. And he says even when Denver is calling CQ cannot get an answer. Normally on 2 meters you would just say that so-and-so is listening. Or you could say KE0OG listening, is anybody around? It's a little bit hard to make contacts because on 2 meters, on VHF, the people who talk together tend to know each other personally. And so they sometimes are reticent to talk to new people. And I know that's very frustrating for new hams. I did a video on new ham frustration. You can search for it on my playlist, New Ham Frustration, and it talks about things to do. One is that I would suggest you find other technicians who live near you and start your own informal on-the-air gatherings. So at least there is something going. If people enjoy listening to that, they'll come and join. It's rough doing that, I know, because people don't always jump up. I can remember when I was helping with the Boulder Amateur Radio Club Junior Division, the kids were getting their licenses at pretty young ages, and even in late elementary school. And when they would get on the air, they would say, so-and-so listening. I remember one girl would go, this is so-and-so listening. So I picked up the microphone and went back to her so she could have a contact. But it's rough because, again, on VHF, people tend to know each other, which is one more reason to join a club and be part of a club and keep club hopping till you find the right club for you. Well, that concludes this episode of Ask Dave, and I hope that the answers have been helpful, and we'll see you all next week. Check out dcastler.com/support. That's where the tip jar is, and also Patreon, things like that, other ways that you can help make this a viewer-supported channel. And thank you for your time. I love making these videos for Augies because I love all the Augies worldwide. And about 25% of the viewers are actually outside the United States, spread all over the world. So until we next meet, 73.